This
Hey,
meeting is
welcome.
being recorded.
Welcome everyone back to another edition of the Rock Fantasy Files on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. I'm your host, Stephen Keeler, and tonight in another of our episodes discussing albums celebrating milestone anniversaries, we set the time machine back to 1987. And boy, I wish we could hop in there for real right now and get the heck out of 2022. We entered a world of thrash metal tonight. Last week, we were in 72 and discussing David Bowie and Alice Cooper. So we've changed gears a bit to discuss two albums celebrating their 35th anniversaries in 2022 with a roundtable discussion, or what you could call it, Pete Pardo and his channel, an album battle featuring Overkill with their second album, Taking Over, that was released in March 1987 through Atlantic and Megaforce Records, going up against the debut album from Bay Area thrashers, of course, the mighty Testament, with their album, The Legacy, that was released in Atlantic and Megaforce Records on April 21st. So we got two Megaforce Atlantic albums going head to head. And thought we'd get together and have a fun episode discussing these two great records. And I still, as we start taping this here tonight, I don't really know if I have a favorite. I think it could be a dead tie. I'll do like Ralph does. Ralph just gives the whole album a tie. He's done this before with Jimi Hendrix. So, hey, we got a great bunch of guests tonight. We'll welcome back our old friend Tony Dio, that hasn't been on a few weeks just for some reason or another. We got Count Ralphus. We got Myles from down in the Southland, also from Louisiana. We got Ryan Gavalier. We got Joey Spaghetti Lee. We've got the Cavaluzzi family. And I actually like it. They're both on two different screens. It looks like we got more people, and I think it works out well. One is suffering from under the bug, so they're isolating. And of course, we've got our grand guest here, Mr. Peter Pardo from the Sea of Tranquility. And so we're going to kick it off tonight. I think we'll go around and or start off with Overkill. We'll talk about the Overkill record. Pick like three songs and any memorable, things you want to talk about on that album, and give it a rating between 1 and 10. We'll loop back and we'll do the Testament record, and we're going to have to choose if we only had back in 1987 the $10, or even now, or whatever it is, $20, $30 to buy the vinyl. We have to just buy one. Which one are you going to take home with you from the record shop or from digital streaming or whatever you're going to buy it on? So let's kick this thing off. I'm going to start off with Count Ralphus tonight, and welcome.
Hey. So yeah, 1987, I seen Overkill for my first time. I went to L'Amour's. It was Nuclear Assault opening up for Overkill on the Taking Over tour. Wow. I don't got a t-shirt from that show, but I the shirt that I wore to that show.
Wow.
It's like a half shirt now, but I love this album. The first two Overkill albums were just incredible to me, big influence to me. Sadly, a lot of the thrash band, by 1988, the next year, I started finding bands like Death and Macabre and Necrophagia, and everything changed for me. A lot of these bands dropped off my radar around 88. I was getting into more extreme music, but this to me was the last really classic album by Overkill. And I've gone back years later and I bought a lot of the CDs, and I really appreciate a lot of the later stuff, but for a long time, this was like it for me. And so my number 3, I'm going to go with Electro Violence. Then number 2, Power Surge. I love that bass line in there. And my number 1 for this album is Deny the Cross. And I'm going to give this rating a 9.
Excellent. As we go over on my screen, at least, it's probably not the same in TV land here, but I'm going to move over to our good brother Tony Dio down in North Carolina and welcome him back to the Rock Fantasy Files. So yeah. Let's hear what you got to say.
Good to be back, guys. We'll say so. Taking Over, I actually saw Overkill on that tour as well. They were opening for Megadeth on the Peace Sales tour. And so that was the first time that I saw either band, and another band called the Necros, I think, were the opening act that night. And so for the album, I really like the album. I went and picked it up. I think this is the actual one. I picked it up the day after seeing them with Megadeth. And so my top 3 are going to be Deny the Cross. I love Blitz's vocal delivery. He's just so fierce on that song.
Yeah.
And number 2, we'll do Electro Violence. And for my third choice, I'm going to go In Union We Stand, because that's actually the first song I heard by them, because they played the video for that on MTV on Headbangers Ball. And it's a great anthem. And I think they still play it a lot now at the set.
Mm-hmm. I think they
So,
still
yeah, I mean, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Excellent. We're going to keep it down in the Southland with the guy that's been known to drink a couple too many alcoholic beverages and wrestle some alligators in his backyard down there, Mr. Myles Bergeron from Miles of Metals here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Overkill and Testament. When I was younger and getting into thrash metal, when all my friends were like staying with like the more generic thrash metal bands, I kind of went and found, Testament, Overkill, and Exodus and all of them. And I've been big fans of these bands since I first listened to them. And Taking Over was one of the first albums I heard from Overkill, and I just freaking loved it from the first time I heard it. I know some people, I've read some people talk negative about Bobby Blitz's vocals, especially on this album for some reason, but I don't agree with it at all. I love his vocal delivery on here. The guitars rip on here. They're so cool, and freaking Rat Skate's drumming on this album is just killer. I always enjoyed the drumming on this album. The 3 songs I'm gonna pick is number 3, I'm gonna pick Wrecking Crew. That was one of the first Overkill songs I've actually heard, and I loved it from the first time I heard it. Number 2, I'm gonna go with Deny the Cross. Awesome. Just I catch myself, like, even if I don't listen to this album in a while, this song will just pop up in my head for some reason, and I don't know why it does, but it just does. But my number 1 favorite song off this album is Fear His Name. And all I'm gonna say is, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Just love that song. And I'm gonna give the album an 8.5, and the only reason why is because there's a few later albums I enjoy a little bit more than Taking Over, but Taking Over is one of the better Overkill albums, and it's up there.
Definitely. All righty, thanks. I'm going to move to our center square tonight. Since we've got 9 people, we have a center square, and Ryan is back from Final Destination, right?
Yep.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. So I mean, this is an excellent album. It wasn't the first Overkill album I heard. I actually spent a lot more time with Years of Decay and Under the Influence. Those were the ones that got me into the band probably like 5-6 years ago. But I really like Overkill. I think they have a lot of great riffs. I do like Bobby's voice a lot. It took me a little bit to get into it because it's very different, but I love it. I think I like the higher range he has, especially on this album. I think he sounds great. And I think that things I like about this album, a lot of fantastic riffs on it. I think when I look at this one versus the other album we're going to talk about, I think there's some more space in the riffs. Like, they're not quite as fast all the time. There's some good mid-tempo riffs, and I really like that on here. And I think they fit Bobby's voice really well. There's a lot of excellent drumming and just good songwriting overall. I do think that this album too, even though they're both very brutal and heavy, I think this one has a kind of fun tone to it at times, whereas the other one's real serious and dark. And I like both tones that these albums have, but it's something I definitely noticed with this one. My top 3 tracks, my number 3 is Power Surge, my number 2 is Fear His Name, and then my number 1 is Deny the Cross.
Nice. And what was your your number out of 10?
I would give it probably an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay. And we're going to slide over and pass the record over to Mr. Pardo. Welcome, Peter.
Welcome, everybody. Mad props to everybody. I see a lot of cool shirts here on the Zoom. And Tony, burn, baby, burn. I got that same shirt. Love it.
That's deep purple.
Deep purple all the way, man. Yep. All right. So, I mean, you know, I was 21 when this album came out, and I played it all the time. Of course, I bought it at Rock Fantasy.
Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, I saw them like so many times back in the day, right around this time. I mean, they were playing around the area quite a bit, in the city or Long Island or Jersey or wherever. And they were one of my favorite thrash bands, because in '87, kind of like Ralph said, it's like, you know, that was really the prime time for thrash. And a year or two later, it's already starting to wane a little bit. So, but this album came out and I was already into the first album. Love this one even more. I love the production of it. I love the riffs on it. I love the energy. Every song to me is absolutely killer. So picking 3 favorite tracks is kind of hard, but I'm going to go with one, Deny the Cross, which is one of the great all-time album openers. Power Surge, number 2. Still love hearing them play that live. And I guess In Union We Stand, but it could be any other. I mean, I guess those are my 3 favorites, but they're all great. Wrecking Crew is great. All of them are great. Fatal to Swallow, but just an amazing album. I would say if I had to give it a rating, and man, I thought about this and the other album all day today, and I'm thinking, Jesus, you know, which one do you pick over the other, and how do you rate them? But it's as near a perfect thrash album as it gets. I'm going to give it 9.5 out of 10. Could be a 10 out of 10 because I love every song on here. So it's amazing. 9.5 out of 10 is what I'm going to go with, but could be 10 out of 10. Great album, killer.
It definitely is. We're going to move over to a real thrash and metal fan down here, all from the Hudson Valley next. And we're going to Mr. Spaghetti Lee. He's got his Exodus shirt on. He just wants to see him.
Smells like it's still got that new car smell. That new t-shirt smell. Just got this weekend. Great show, Testament, Exodus, and Death Angel in Jersey.
Come on, Spaghetti, show off those sleeves, man. What's the sleeves say?
Oh, Bonded by Blood, and I got my camera set to reverse image. So
yeah, there you go.
Funny thing about this shirt, I went over to the merch table and I just gave a quick scan, and as soon as my eyes locked on this thing, I didn't look at anything else because I wanted it so bad. It was like, ooh, give me that shirt. Just take that shirt. I can't even look at anything else because I want that shirt. Luckily, they're coming around again in the fall, and maybe I'll buy a tour shirt. I should have gotten a Bay Area thrash tour shirt because such a cool vibe. If anybody out there gets a chance to go see this tour, go. It's a great time, especially since I went to a show last night, a punk rock show in New York City. It was off the chain crazy and violent. We'll talk about that a second time. But the camaraderie in the room at this show just made me proud to be a metalhead. Go see this tour. It's excellent. All right. This Overkill record. This was the first Overkill record I ever heard. I love it. It brings me back to a time. Both of these albums bring me back to a time where thrash metal just ruled the world. It was changing the way I was looking at music. Thrash, the Big Four, all the Bay Area bands, Anthrax, Overkill, just changed the way I looked at music. I began to open my mind to punk and hardcore and heavier stuff. I didn't really go down the death metal road. I didn't really care for the vocals, but it broadened my taste instead of closed them. It wasn't just thrash metal incorporated punk rock. It definitely did, especially the English punk, GBH, Exploited, and Discharge, of course, were heavily influential on these bands. And you can hear some of that punk rock influence on this album. The track Power Surge has a typical punk rock bass intro, which is great. There's a lot of call and response on this record. Vocals, and the back vocals, you scream back at them. That's very, very punk rock. I love that about thrash. This record, like Pete said, it's basically flawless. I find it's consistent all the way through, maybe a little bit of a dip on a track called In Union We Stand, but it's just not that bad. But all the way through from the start, it gets you. It's amazing. It's a killer album. And they were a 4-piece band at the time. They've since added another guitar player, and they're really killer live. I've even mentioned on Pete's show a couple of weeks ago, I think Overkill now is just as good, if not better now. Like, I like them more now. And I think as I get older, I have a sort of sentimental attachment. I feel like I almost grew up with them. Like, I'm really happy and proud that they're killing it now. They
Yes.
really are. So my favorite, it goes pretty much along the lines as Ralph. Number 3 is Electro Violence. I just want to note that song opens with a soaring guitar solo. I like songs that open with a little soaring guitar solo intro. So that's like an epic thrash anthem. Number 2 is Wrecking Crew, and number 1 is Fear His Name. Those 2 songs, it's the second and third songs on the album. Those 2 songs in a row just right away make this record a classic, just all the way through. They're awesome. And as in total, I'd give it an 8, easily an 8. Solid 8. Killer album. Great record.
Ooh,
It does sound a little, the only thing you could say, as far as not liking the vocals, I listened to this record for the first time all the way through today in a long, long time. It does sound 80s. It definitely shows its age in the production value, but in the delivery, it's just killer. It's excellent. That's it.
Oh, cool. Where we're going to go back to North Carolina here and visit one of my older friends, and he is on as a father and son team tonight, and little Johnny keeps popping in and out, but he's back now. Good. So, but we're gonna go with the father first. He's the next one in line. So we got John Cavaluzzi, and we'll get your 2 cents on this Overkill album.
I love the album. I think it's a classic. I like everything about it. I got all excited today listening to it. I texted Ralph how much I didn't remember how much I absolutely loved it. I think it's great. It's probably, I don't know, it might be my favorite Overkill album. I like Feel the Fire too. So I don't know. It's pretty close, but I do love it. I would say number 3, I like Use Your Head. I just remember being 17. Yeah, they cursed in it. So when I was a kid, I loved that. 17, this is great. Number 2, I would go with Power Surge. Number 1, I'd go with Electro Violence, and I'm going to give it 9.5. It's a great album, start to finish. I love the vocals. I love everything about it. It threw me right back to another era, and I couldn't say enough good things about it. I don't know, loved it. It even had like a lot of like breakdowns that I didn't even realize like how slamming of an album it really is. It has a little bit of that New York, New Jersey hardcore kind of. It's a slamming album. It's really great. Anyway, and I loved it, and I'm interested to hear what Johnny has to say because he just got COVID at a Testament concert, so he was acting like a maniac and crowd surfing and slamming and all the things I told him not to do. He literally didn't listen to a word I said, so he wound up with COVID. But it's good. I'm glad he's healthy because it's a good break for me. I haven't had to be next to him for like 5-7 days, so I don't have any complaints here. I'm glad he's doing good. So anyway, I'll send you right over. Next guy.
Man,
Hey, I guess it's me.
yeah, it's your turn. Welcome.
My top 3 for 3 is Power Surge. My 2 is In Union We Stand. And my number 1 is Wrecking Crew. I love the vocals on Wrecking Crew. And I would give it an 8.5.
Excellent. I tell you, this album, you can tell it's such a great album and has so many great songs because almost every song has been mentioned off this album. It's not like we do some shows and of course everybody picks like, same songs. There's a lot of variety here. There are a lot of repeat songs, but as I look at this album, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at a list anyhow. I don't have the physical copy. I think it's at the shop. But one song that no one's mentioned, I love the closer, The Nightmare Continues also. Yeah. But I didn't put that in my top 3. And I'm glad someone mentioned Use Your Head. I love that song too. A little politically incorrect probably, but I'm like ECW wrestling. I'm politically incorrect and proud of it. Don't get me, I could get canceled for that, but but some of the lyrics that come out in that song are but it's 80s and it's metal. And my top 3 from this album is I'm gonna mention one I don't think anybody's mentioned yet. Fatal if Swallowed. Just love that song and how he pushes that through. Bobby Blitz is one of the top, legendary frontmen in metal, and he's still going strong. He's like a living legend. I mean, he does not disappoint still in 2022, his live performance, and he's always been that guy. He's just a New York, New Jersey, like metro area legend in the metal business, and of course, I guess worldwide, but coming from this area. And my other songs up here are Electro Violence. Everyone's mentioned Power Surge. This is probably my favorite. But when I look at this album, like Pete Pardo said, we could almost do a Ralph Tambora and make it a tie. And Union We Stand could be, I'd say, one of the, in my mind, one of the weakest tracks, but I still love that song. And of course, that was like one of the singles from the album, So I'm going to give this album a 10 out of a 10. I don't mind the production. I think the production on this album is a lot better than the Testament album that we're talking about tonight. I think the Testament could really use a remix or a remaster, the Legacy. But I'm not supposed to talk about that album yet. We're just talking about Overkill. So Overkill, I'm giving it the highest rating anybody did, but there's nothing that I don't like on the album. And it's probably my second favorite album by Overkill. I think me and Pete did a ranking a few years ago, and I believe I picked the first album, which is just another great record. But Overkill really never dropped the ball. They're still putting out great records to this day, unlike some other thrash metal bands. Well, at least one I can speak of, but that's a whole nother story for another episode. So we're going to kick this back in the same order. And I guess Count Ralphus did go first last time. We're going to move over to the other 1987 album with Testament, with The Legacy. Another just excellent record in my opinion.
Real quick about Overkill. Bobby Blitz just turned 63 like yesterday.
Wow.
This week he turned 63. And I seen Overkill twice in 2022. And it's just amazing that 35 years later, after the first time I seen him, I'm still seeing him. And I seen him within the same month of seeing Nuclear Assault, which is pretty crazy. And I had honorable mentions for the Overkill album, but it was like going to be like the Jimi Hendrix, where I was just all of a sudden I had every song on there. Even in Union We Stand, I love them all. And the only thing I don't like is the album cover. I always thought that was a real lame album cover. It's my old cassette.
Yeah,
it's
dates it too. It's 80s.
It's definitely a weird album cover. It almost looks like an Escape from New York or something, kind of like a apocalyptic.
I liked it. That was cool. I had it on a shirt. I bought a shirt at the show when I saw him with Megadeth, and it had that album cover on it.
I would love for them to come out and just do this album in full. Yeah,
be great.
So, 1987 again. I seen Testament open up for Slayer at L'Amour's on the Rain and Blood tour. I bought the Testament album a month before the show. Never heard of them really. Later on, I ended up getting the Legacy demo, which has Steve Souza, from Exodus. And it's weird how they're on tour together now. But he left the Legacy to join Exodus, and Billy came in to do the Testament album. And now all these years later, you kind of wonder if he regretted it, because now they're opening up for Testament, But when I seen them at that show at L'Amour's, the rabid Slayer fans didn't give Testament a warm welcome at all. They were spitting and saying fuck you, and just everybody just wanted Slayer. Most people didn't know Testament at the time. I thought they were great. I like the album a lot. I think the Overkill album, I like the production better. But so for number 3, I'm going to go with Curse of the Legions of Death. I think it's the heaviest song on the album. It's real brutal. Then I love The Haunting for number 2. Got that really cool opening riff and great solos throughout this whole album. And for number 1, I'm going with Over the Wall. I like Chuck's vocals are great on this album. As the years went on, I didn't really like his vocals so much, and they fell off my radar kind of right after this album. It wasn't until the album Demonic came out years later, like 10 years later, 1997, when they got back on my radar. They put out like basically a death metal album, and his vocals were so brutal and stuff. But so yeah, I'll give this an 8 out of 10. And if I can only pick one to buy, it's got to be the Overkill. That takes me back to that era, like Johnny was saying.
Mhm.
When you hear that album, it just takes me back to that. And even when they could go to L'Amour's back then, they always played this album in between the bands, and
Yeah.
everybody would just be moshing nonstop, even with no real band on. They'd be moshing for the bands, and then they'd be moshing in between the bands. So every time I hear this, it brings me back to that time. And I have I don't have the Testament shirt from that tour, but I still have my Slayer Rain and Blood tour shirt from
Wow.
Wow. Man, Ralph is a museum, dude.
It is a museum. He should open a museum.
Dude, what a collection.
The hell with
He's
the
done
Rock
it
and Roll Hall of
all
Fame.
over.
Just have Ralph set one up.
Yeah. I wish I'd kept all my old concert
Me
shirts.
too. Oh my God.
I still got a ton, but I don't have any of my really old ones.
Ralph has a
Oh, man, I had a
retirement
Ride
fund.
the Lightning tour shirt, man. Oh,
I only
So
had them
wish I
all,
had
especially old men like me. You know, only one I got left is I sold off most, and I don't know what happened. I still got my
That's what I
Heaven
did.
and Hell Black and Blue tour, which I
but
showed
back
off
in
on
the day, we
Pardo.
cut them up, right? Cut them up. Ralph,
Oh,
didn't you have a
yeah.
half shirt Overkill? We cut them off, cut the sleeves off, and then they turn into rags.
That's what happened eventually. Yeah. That's a
one
good
time-
point with Testament. I stuck with Testament, unlike Ralph, but yeah, when they came out with Demonic, like, you know, a lot of the thrash bands really petered out, you know, like Metallica and stuff, and changed their gears in the 90s. Testament went the other way, and they went more
not
of a,
till years later, though. Not till years
Yeah.
later.
yeah,
Low.
I
Every
mean,
thrash band- every
mid
thrash band
90s though,
comes
they really went back not heavy with that Demonic and then the Gathering. Yeah.
years later, but every thrash band tried to chase that Metallica success there for a while.
Yes,
and
you're
Yeah.
right.
so many of them-
And they
I
did
mean,
with the
there's that
ritual.
one Overkill video where they look exactly like Metallica looked in the one video. They had the black wristbands on. They look exactly.
Yeah,
like-
exactly. Yeah.
Everybody was chasing that success, and that's what opened the doors for the more extreme music. for me.
Yes. Shoot me, but I like the Ritual. But I like all that stuff, even the more melodic, mellow stuff. But cool. So we're gonna move over to back to North Carolina with Tony Dio.
Yeah, the Legacy is a great album. It was the first thing I ever got, of course, by Testament. And when I first got into hearing them, I remember a friend of mine had picked up the cassette, and we'd go cruising around, and he played it for me. And I remember seeing the Over the Wall video on Headbangers Ball, so I had to go out and get it. And it's probably my favorite Testament album. I mean, I liked the New Order a whole lot as well, and a few of the other ones. And kind of like what Ralph said, kind of, I don't know about a Ritual. I kind of like lost interest, but I went back years later and listened to it. And I do like it. But when they came out with Low and Chuck started singing real aggressive on there, and it had like Jimmy Murphy on guitar, that was a great album as well.
That was.
But the Legacy we're talking about, I'm going to pick my 3 songs from that. Definitely Over the Wall is going to be one, because that was the video, and I just always dug that song, and I love the little the solo that Alex does with the it's so catchy, you know. It's just it's really cool. It's almost kind of an Iron Maiden type thing, or new wave of British metal type thing in a way, kind of a you know, salute to that. And it's just a cool song. I'll pick Alone in the Dark. I thought that's a really straightforward, more traditional metal song. And like Ralph mentioned about the Legacy demos, I got those years ago, and hearing Steve Zetro singing those songs, you know, it's really cool. And I think they actually went back and re-recorded that with him for the First Strike is Deadly or something they put out in the 2000s. Yeah, that's it. So, and my third one, I'm going to go with Burnt Offerings, another great one from that album. And you know, we're talking about the demo. There was a song on the demo called Reign of Terror, and they did it. I heard they recorded it during the Legacy period, but they didn't release it except as a B-side, I think, to maybe Apocalyptic City or something like that EP. But that's a really great song, and that's a killer thrash song. I always thought it sounded kind of like Chemical Warfare by Slayer, the arrangement of the song. But as far as our rating, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Again, on this one, it's going to end up tying with the Overkill, because they're both just great albums.
But now the big question is, you're that guy going to the record shop, and you only got money to buy one. Which one you taking home, Tony?
I would go with Overkill if I had to pick between the two.
Okay.
Just because I'm a bigger
Overkill's up.
Overkill fan. And like I said, we just saw Testament,
Yeah.
John and Johnny and I were all at the same show. It was a great show. Those guys still deliver, but it's great that they got, Alex back and some of the classic lineup for a while there. Of course, it's kind of falling apart again, and they've got Lombardo on drums now, and they've got who is it? Is it Steve playing bass now?
Steve DiGiorgio.
DiGiorgio.
Right?
Steve Giorgio.
Yeah. Great lineup. It was a great show the other night. I mean, all the bands were great, and it's good to see, bands that I saw 30 years ago are still out there doing it and putting on just as good a show as they did when they were younger.
Yeah, Death Angel's solid too nowadays.
Death
I know
Angel,
Death Angel,
excellent.
Exodus.
They were so
Yeah.
good.
I haven't got to see Testament with Lombardo since back in the 90s. I saw them at the Starland Ballroom. Not Starland, at Birch Hill. I forget, on that tour years ago. But how was it with everybody that's been there? How was it with Lombardo? Was a lot different experience than Hoagland? Did you tell a big difference?
I didn't really tell a whole lot of difference myself, really.
Because I mean, Hoagland,
they're playing the songs and he's playing them pretty much like they're supposed to be played, I guess,
some people
like
were
the
saying at the
original.
Starland that they thought that they were actually sped up with Lombardo, like really fast. So
I didn't know.
A lot of bands play their stuff faster when they play it live.
yeah,
anyway,
true.
so to be
Might just been
expected.
someone's point of view. All right, so we got
He
Overkill
also
2.
hits it harder.
What's that, Johnny?
He also hits it much harder than Gene.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, it's well, if you're gonna lose Gene Hoagland, I guess getting Lombardo is a pretty good replacement for sure.
But I just saw Gene Hoglan at the Hell's Heroes Fest play with Dark Angel, his old band.
Yeah.
That was a couple weekends ago. That was really cool.
Yeah, Ryan Scow was talking
Yeah,
about that.
hung
I
out
think.
with Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan was there with you guys. Yep.
Mhm.
Ryan, the world traveler, from Pete Pardo's corner. Now we're gonna go back to Louisiana with Mr. Myles Bergeron and get his 2 cents. And right now, Overkill's got a little bit of a lead, 2-0 on this one.
Yeah, so this is the first Testament album I ever heard. And when I was getting into thrash metal, I was looking to get into bands, and I was like, Testament's one of the ones that are up there. Let me get into them. And I heard The Legacy. And when Over the Wall kicked in, I almost lost my mind how much the first time I ever heard this record, I loved it since I pressed play. I just always loved it. I was, like I said, I was hooked on this album when I first heard it. Alex Skolnick's guitar playing on here is just so killer, and Chuck Billy's vocals, I've always been a fan of them, and I've always said it. If you ask me, if we would get the big four, I'd kick Anthrax out and I'd put Testament in there because I own all the Testament records. I love all of them. Demonic, yeah, it is what it is, but I still do like that record a lot. But the 3 songs I like off this record, First Strike Deadly, I'd put at number 3. Number 2, Curse of the Legion of Death, and number 1 is Over the Wall. It's one of the most killer songs I think I've ever heard in thrash. It's just so awesome. Now I'm saying all this about this record, and I do love this record, but I'm gonna give it the same, an 8.5, just because this is a 10 out of 10 to me. I love this record, and I have been known to, if y'all ever come to Thibodaux, Louisiana, and y'all ever in the bar room and y'all ever hear Disciples of the Watch just play out the blue, 10 times out of 10 it was me in there playing it, because I seem to always do that when I go to bar rooms, is play Disciples of the Watch. It's like known. But
That's great.
even though I love this record, The Legacy, if I had to pick out of the 2, and it's gonna kill me to do this because I love this record, I'm gonna go with Overkill, because man, that Overkill record to me is just so catchy. It's like all the songs on there are just so catchy, and it's not like this one's not. It's just I don't know. I like those songs off of that Overkill record a little bit more than some of the songs off of this one. So Overkill is the one I'm gonna be picking.
Boom. Yeah, you got to use your head, man.
You would have asked me about like an hour ago, and you would have put a gun in my head. I would have just said pull the trigger. But
yeah, it's a close one, but I understand. So we're back to our center square with Mr. Ryan, who actually from Final Destination. I'm always calling you after the movie, and you're out of. He's from the state of Ohio, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So we got Ohio in the center square tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think this is one of the most impressive metal debuts, especially of the 80s. I mean, and especially in thrash. I think this is probably better than all of the big four debuts, except maybe Kill 'Em All. I don't know. It's real close there for me. But I just think it's a fantastic album. I love all the songs. I think it's extremely heavy. It's epic. It's dark. It's serious. The production is maybe a little aged, but I think the Overkill one is too. But that's not a deal breaker for me with an 80s thrash album. Like a lot of them sound kind of dated production wise. I think that this album is so aggressive that it doesn't even bother me. It's still like a full frontal assault on all measures. I really like Chuck Billy's voice on this. He has a good amount of versatility. He has that kind of like snarling type voice. He has some really excellent screams on the album. I definitely like his vocal performance more than I like Bobby's on the Overkill one, even though I love that too. My top 3 tracks on this album, my number 3 is going to be Apocalyptic City. I really like how it starts off soft, really good lead guitar, then it just takes off and it's brutal. My number 2 is going to be Burnt Offerings for kind of similar reasons. I like the lead guitars and stuff at the beginning and then heavy riffs. I also like when the drums come in, they just crash so hard, and the timing is interesting because the riff comes in pretty fast. Then the drumming almost feels a little slower to me, but then it kind of kicks in like it normalizes, but it's a weird type of thing, and I like that. Then my number 1 is going to be Over the Wall. It's just such a brutal opening track, one of the heaviest for sure. And rating wise for this album, I'm going to give it like a 9.5 out of 10, and I'm going to pick it as my favorite of these two.
Okay.
I like that it's heavier. I like that it's darker. And I just overall think that Chuck's voice on this album resonates more with me than Bobby's. It kind of has more that classic growling, well, not growling, but like aggressive lower tone voice in thrash, kind of more like the punky roots that the genre has. And I enjoy that a lot. I think they're both really great albums, great early albums by both bands, but I think this one just impresses me more.
Excellent. So put away the brooms, everybody. Testament's getting the vote. Let's see if they can build any momentum here. Moving over next to the Sea of Tranquility Zone, Peter Pardo. Thanks for joining us again tonight, giving your time to the channel, Pete.
God, always a pleasure. All right, so the Legacy killer album, once again bought from Rock Fantasy in Middletown, New
Thank
York,
you.
1987, where I bought all my heavy metal records from back in the day. I mean, I listened to this a ton, and I think probably one of the real eye-opening things about this album, not that we didn't see it in Metallica and Megadeth albums at the time, but man, the guitar work on this album and in this band was off the chain. I mean, this is like shredding guitar work on this album. And that was really eye-opening for me. I kind of dig the production on this album. The riffs are furious and fast. I love Chuck Billy's vocals. And there was just, I mean, this album just wowed the shit out of me and everybody I knew back at the time who was listening to this kind of stuff. One of the great metal debuts of the 80s, thrash or otherwise. As far as my 3 favorite songs, I mean, Jesus, I love every song on here. How about those first 3 in a row? Over the Wall, The Haunting, Burnt Offerings. I mean, it's like boom, boom, boom. You're hooked right off the bat. I love this album. I'm going to give this also a 9.5 out of 10. It's near perfect for me. It's still one of my favorite Testament albums of all time. Here's the thing, though, comparing both of these bands. They both started off really good. Both of them kind of faltered a little bit in the mid-period, but still have plenty of good material. And both of these bands have been killing it in recent years.
Yep.
Recent years
Came
being
back
the last,
strong.
Two of the most consistent bands still around today.
Absolutely, good point.
the last decade or two, both
Killing.
Testament and Overkill have released some of the best albums of their career. I will say, if we were talking about like both bands overall in their career, I would probably give the edge to Testament, because I think Testament's last like 4 albums are like drop dead classics. Overkill's are really great too. I'm not as nuts about the couple of albums that are like Testament's like 3rd and 4th album are okay. I like the kind of death metal stuff too. That's pretty good as well. But their most recent stuff is absolutely amazing. But I think when it comes down to looking at just these 2 albums, to me, they're almost neck and neck, perfect matchups. I love them both equally. So I got to say, well, which one do I have a little bit more fun with, if that makes sense? And to me, the album is just a little bit more listenable. It's also a little bit longer. There's an extra 8 minutes of content on this particular album, and that's the Overkill album. And I'm going to give that the ever so narrow win here. It's not by much. And I debated this all day long. I've gone the other way like 5 hours ago. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to stick with Overkill, just because I think, to me, every song on the Overkill album is a drop dead classic. And I almost can say that for this album. Do or die, maybe not. The rest of it's amazing. So Overkill gets the win for me, just by like that much right there. So they're both great. They're both deserving here. So there's no losers in this show at all.
Really? You don't like the song Do or Die as much?
I like it, but I don't think it's as classic as some of the others.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. It's hard to find a weak spot, but you got to find the weakest
Just a dip
in your mind. Yeah.
Just a
All right. So Overkill, another vote for Overkill. It's like they're well in the lead here. And here we go. Back to Joey.
Well, this might be closer than you think at the end.
Okay.
Just a little note of trivia. You may know that Testament's original band name, was Legacy, but they couldn't use it for legal reasons. Somebody else had it. So at the last minute, they changed their name to Testament. And that was suggested by Billy Milano of SOD and MOD fame.
Wow.
I guess he was sitting around in the offices that day when that unfortunate news that they couldn't use the Legacy came in. And I guess Johnny Zazula, and they had to make a choice. And it was Billy Milano who came up with Testament. This album, The Legacy, also produced by Alex Perialis, who is legendary. His name is on a lot of really killer records. SOD right there, Myles coming through. Great. I also, just a quick mention personally, I saw this tour in '87 with Slayer, and I don't think too much that people were hating on Testament. It's just people really love Slayer. I mean, if you're going, if you're playing before Slayer, you're going to catch shit no matter what. You know what I mean? So I did see that at Sundance, not L'Amour's.
Oh, okay.
Killer, man. You know what? And I even forgot that I saw Testament. I also forgot that I saw Creator in '87 too, because I went to see DRI. But you don't think about opening acts too much. But this was the first Testament I heard, obviously. And after I gave up with them pretty much after the next record, New World Order. Just again, my taste went in a different direction. But I love this record. The 1, 2, 3 punch of the tracks, The Haunting, Burnt Offerings, and Raging Water. You can almost go right, my picks would be 3, 2, 1. Number 1 being Raging Waters. I love that. All those tracks are killer. Basically just pure thrash, killer riffs, killer skippity riff, that whole thrash just defines thrash. As far as, I'm going to give this album a 9. And if I had to pick between the two, I'm in the records. I'm in Rock Fantasy Records in 1987, and I can only pick 2. I'm picking the Legacy, man.
All right.
I'm picking the
Another
Legacy.
vote for Testament.
Hey, is that from that little box? That little box set?
It is the little box set.
This one?
These are awesome. I love these things, man.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, if anybody out there listening, if
$20,
if you can find, I paid $7 for this, and it's the first 4 Testament albums on here, and you can't beat it. Freaking awesome, and they sound good too.
Yep.
You can find any of these; they're good for the money.
Yeah,
I got a Dream Theater one actually.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of those too. They're great. They're great. Joey, you and I were probably at a million shows together and didn't know it at Sundance back in the 80s. I was there
probably
every summer, like every weekend.
Yeah, I was there a lot.
Place. Yeah, great place. We'll share stories one of these days.
Yeah. I made it to Sundance a couple times myself. Saw Testament there once. Believe they were there with Sabotage years ago. If my memory serves me right, and that memory part is fading from those days a little bit.
I know.
But anyhow, we're back to the Cavaluzzi family for their picks. So we'll go with Dad first, as we did in the first round.
I really enjoy this album. I think it's real good, especially for a debut. For them to just come right out and hit the scene with this album. I thought it's really good. I love Testament. I think their last 3 or 4 are just as good as anything out there. They're in my big 4 of thrash. If I'd kick out all 3 bands except for Slayer, and I'd have Destruction, Sodom, and Slayer and Testament. So
Wow.
My big 4 is probably weird. You guys will probably hate that, but
I like Sodom.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. But as far as this album goes, everything you guys have said, it's such a straightforward thrash album. There's times where I could hear some early Slayer in it. There's times where I hear so many different bands, but I love the vocals. I don't mind the production. I definitely liked where they went when they hit Demonic and The Gathering and stuff like that. But I love where they are right now. I think their new stuff is just absolutely killer. When it comes to this album, I'd probably go with Burnt Offerings as number 3. Number 2, First Strike is Deadly. And number 1, Over the Wall. Over the Wall was the first one I ever heard, and it caught my ear, and I loved it ever since. I'd give the album probably, I can't give it what I give Overkill, even though I like Testament more than I like Overkill. I would still only give it an 8. I can't give it a 9 or a 9.5 like I did for Overkill. Overkill is a better album for me.
Cool. So Overkill gets another vote, and we move over to Johnny.
So, my top 3 are Cursed Legions of Death, Over the Wall, and The First Strike is Deadly. I have to give it a tie. I can't choose one.
So you're voting for both. So Dad gave you extra allowance. You're getting to buy both.
Johnny, show him all the picks you caught at the show. This kid came out.
Yeah, I caught 3 picks.
Nice.
It's good that you caught picks and not just COVID.
Yeah. Probably having got it, scrambling on the floor trying to get him.
I lost my phone that night. It was a crazy night.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I found it.
Security.
You gotta leave your phone with Dad if you're going in the pit, man.
Chuck Billy had it.
He said he was going to the bathroom. He said he was going to the restroom. Next thing you know, he's crowd surfing in front of me.
That's how
So
you do it.
so he's not playing the game correctly here. He says he's getting both of them. You're not gonna, you can't pick one over the other, huh?
Yeah, you got to pick one.
Then I guess I'm going with Testament.
All right, vote for Testament. Cool. All righty. So yeah, I guess it's my turn. And Overkill, let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5-3 so far for Overkill's got this wrapped up tonight, but it's been a great episode. My Testament songs from that album are Over the Wall, like everyone else's pick. Such a great track. I'm going to go with The Haunting, and I'm going to go with, I'm changing a pick while we're doing this. I'm going with Curse of Legions of Death. As everyone was talking about it, I had a different track written down, but that song is just so heavy. And,
Steve, you froze up. You might want to start over. You froze up.
Did I freeze up? I'm
Yeah.
getting a message that
Yeah,
my
you
internet,
did.
the
Go
internet
back to
is
Over the Wall.
Over the Wall, The Haunting, and Curse of the Legions of Death. Yeah, it just shows that my internet is unstable for some reason. God knows why. But and if I'm picking one, I'm leaning with Overkill on this. I just love that Overkill record from top to bottom. Not that I don't with the Testament, but it's just so tough. All day long, I've been trying, even all week, I didn't even want to like think about which one am I going to do. It's like it's too tough to put in my brain right now.
Yeah.
But
These albums are totally close. I mean, it could be a tie.
am I breaking
was
up
kind of
again,
weird.
or can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, a little
You're
bit.
okay
Frozen
now.
A little bit.
Yeah, I just showed that the internet dropped off, but it looks like it's back. So I don't know what's going on. It's not storming or anything out, but wacky Spectrum internet, I guess. So the winner tonight is going with Overkill. It's over Testament if we're really doing the battle, but I like just taking two albums and talking about them. Sometimes we talk about three, and we're going to be changing pace for next week's episode. We're actually going with back to 1967, something that Rand set up. So, but we've got plenty more episodes set up coming on, and we talk about some stuff that we're going to do down the road. So I want everybody to mention your favorite album, what your favorite moments from these albums in the comments, and pick a winner on the viewers and all that good stuff, and hit subscribe and all that stuff. Hit like, and we'll see you next time on the Rock Fantasy Files. Bang.
Go to a show. Go see live music.
Hey, go buy a record. Go buy a CD.
Go buy a
Come to
record.
Rock
Go-
Fantasy.
Rock
Go watch
Fantasy.
Pardo.
Metal.